When it comes to tractors, the engine is the heart of the machine. But not all engines are created equal, and some are downright disasters. Over the decades, farmers and tractor enthusiasts have seen their fair share of unreliable, underpowered, and outdated engines that turned everyday work into a mechanical nightmare. In this video, we're digging deep into the rusted remains of history to bring you the 13 worst and oldest tractor engines of all time, the ones you should avoid at all costs. These engines might have been praised at launch, but time has revealed their flaws. Poor fuel efficiency, constant overheating, hard starts, weak horsepower, and parts that are nearly impossible to find today. Some were victims of bad engineering, others just couldn't keep up with the demands of modern farming. Whether you're thinking of restoring an old tractor or buying a used one, knowing which engines to steer clear of can save you serious time, money, and frustration. So buckle up as we break down the worst offenders in tractor engine history. Let's get started. Number 13, the Waukesha 310 Turbo Diesel is a lumbering relic that somehow manages to be both underwhelming and over-engineered in the worst ways. Originally intended to serve as a heavy-duty workhorse, it stumbles over its own weight and complexity, delivering sluggish performance wrapped in a package that feels outdated even by mid-century standards. Its turbocharging system, which should theoretically offer a performance boost, instead feels like a desperate attempt to mask the engine's inherent inefficiency and lack of refinement. Power delivery is erratic, vibration levels are excessive, and the noise output borders on industrial punishment, more akin to a malfunctioning cement mixer than a refined diesel engine. Reliability is a constant question mark. It's infamous for oil leaks, injector issues, and a baffling tendency to overheat under what should be normal operating conditions. The design is a cluttered mess of parts that seem to be in a constant argument with each other, and maintenance is a nightmare only the most masochistic mechanics would willingly endure. In real-world use, fuel efficiency is laughable and emissions output is prehistoric, making it a nightmare in any context where environmental standards matter. In short, the Waukesha 310 Turbo Diesel is the mechanical equivalent of a cautionary tale, an engine that should serve only as a reminder of how not to build a power plant. Number 12, the Caterpillar 3150 Diesel is a textbook example of how even the biggest names in heavy machinery can completely miss the mark. Marketed as a robust and capable engine, the 3150 instead delivers a spectacularly unimpressive blend of sluggish power, clunky engineering, and maddening unreliability. From the moment it starts, assuming it even does, you're greeted with an unsettling symphony of mechanical groans and smoky exhaust that signals exactly what's to come: frustration. Despite its size, the engine produces mediocre horsepower and laughably poor torque for its displacement, struggling under loads that smaller engines handle with ease. Fuel economy is an afterthought, as the 3150 drinks diesel like a parched elephant, offering terrible efficiency with zero justification. Cooling issues are a recurring nightmare, often boiling over at the worst times. While oil consumption and leaks are so common, they might as well be listed in the specs. Maintenance is a full-time job, not helped by the confusing layout and parts that seem to require a degree in engineering sorcery to replace. Vibrations are excessive, noise levels are unbearable, and its emissions footprint belongs in a museum of outdated technology. For a company known for durable power plants, the Caterpillar 3150 feels like a prototype that accidentally went into production, a lumbering, inefficient, underperforming embarrassment that's better off forgotten. Number 11. The Caterpillar D311 is a perfect storm of underperformance, archaic design, and infuriating inefficiency that somehow still manages to tarnish the reputation of an otherwise respected brand. Billed as a dependable mid-size diesel engine, it instead delivers an asthmatic crawl of power that feels more like an insult than an output, struggling to perform even the most basic industrial tasks without groaning, rattling, and puffing out a cloud of soot like a dying furnace. Its one-cylinder per cylinder inline-4 layout is as primitive as it gets, offering a laughably low horsepower figure that fails to justify its massive footprint and excessive fuel consumption. Starting it in cold weather is a ritual of frustration, requiring either divine intervention or a can of ether just to wake it from its mechanical slumber. And once it does run, the experience is far from smooth. Harsh vibrations, an ear-splitting mechanical drone, and oil leaks that seem to appear out of nowhere make even short-term operation a chore. Reliability? Questionable at best. Maintenance access is clumsy. Parts are notoriously overpriced for what little they offer in return. And the engine seems to have been assembled with the logic of a mad scientist. Nothing intuitive, everything stubborn. Cooling issues, worn-out injection systems, and sluggish throttle response only add to the misery. In an era when diesel engines were starting to show promise, the D311 felt like a bad throwback even when it was new. A sluggish, noisy, maintenance-hungry relic that should have stayed on the drawing board. Number 10. The Massie Ferguson AD 3.152 is a prime example of how mediocrity can be packaged as simplicity and sold as reliable, when in reality it's just a chronic underachiever. This three-cylinder diesel, often found rattling away in old Massie Ferguson tractors, sounds like a coffee can full of bolts being shaken by an angry farmer, and performs with all the enthusiasm of a snail stuck in molasses. Producing barely enough horsepower to mow a lawn, it wheezes through workloads that would make even modest engines blush. Cold starts are a gamble. Smoke output is generous enough to qualify as a mosquito control system. And the engine's rough idle feels like it's trying to vibrate the entire machine into retirement. While its mechanical injection system might sound appealing to purists, it's really just a euphemism for impossible to tune properly without a wrench, a prayer, and a headache. Oil leaks are standard fare. Fuel consumption is oddly high for such a tiny power plant. And let's not forget the joy of replacing parts that were clearly installed by engineers who hated mechanics. The AD 3.152 might limp along for years out of sheer stubbornness, but longevity means nothing when every hour of use is marred by noise, smoke, and a total lack of refinement. It's the diesel equivalent of a stubborn mule. Loud, smelly, slow, and impossible to love. For anyone who spent real time behind a machine powered by this engine, legendary reliability starts to feel more like a cruel joke than a compliment. Number 9. The Tecumpsa HH120 is the kind of engine that makes you question every decision that led to owning it. A mechanical blunder wrapped in tinny, outdated engineering that somehow earned a place in far too many garden tractors and snowblowers. With a reputation built more on nostalgic suffering than actual performance, this 12-horsepower flathead single-cylinder engine is a masterclass in frustration. Cold starts are legendary, in the worst possible way, requiring endless cranking, fiddling with the choke, and hoping today's the day it decides to cooperate. Once it fires, you're rewarded with a deafening mechanical thrash that sounds like it's grinding itself to pieces, coupled with violent vibrations that can loosen bolts, teeth, and your will to live. It guzzles fuel with the thirst of an engine twice its size, and yet delivers performance that feels sluggish and clunky, with torque delivery as flat as its head design. Maintenance is a comedy of errors, carburetors that won't stay tuned, governor linkages that randomly fall out of adjustment, and ignition systems that fail just when you need them most. Overheating isn't a possibility, it's an expectation, thanks to its prehistoric cooling system and poor airflow design. And let's not forget the parts availability, either non-existent or absurdly overpriced, ensuring every repair feels like punishment. The HH120 isn't just an unreliable power plant, it's a textbook case of everything wrong with small engine design. It may still run for some, but only out of sheer spite. Anyone calling this engine dependable is either nostalgic, misinformed, or hasn't tried starting one in winter. Number 8. The Kohler K241 is the kind of engine that gets romanticized far beyond what it ever deserved. An outdated, underperforming, maintenance-hungry lump of iron that somehow earned a reputation for reliability, despite having all the grace and efficiency of a jackhammer in a sandstorm. With its clunky single-cylinder, side valve design, and a grand total of 10 horsepower that feels more like 5 on a good day. The K241 struggles to keep pace with even modest tasks. It shudders to life with a reluctant cough, belching smoke like a wood stove, and immediately announcing itself with a harsh mechanical racket that never lets up. Cold starts are hit or miss. Carburetor issues are practically guaranteed, and the ignition system is a gremlin's playground. Points constantly need adjusting, and spark quality is about as consistent as weather in the mountains. As for vibration, the K241 might as well be shaking itself apart on purpose, rattling every bolt and bracket in its path, leaving behind a trail of metal fatigue and annoyance. Oil leaks are practically a design feature. The governor system feels like it was engineered by guesswork, and the cooling fins clog up faster than you can clean them. And when something does go wrong, which it inevitably will, parts might be available, but at prices that make you question why you're still investing in this mechanical fossil. The K241 isn't a timeless classic. It's a tired, outdated engine that's been limping along on nostalgia and YouTube repair videos. Anyone still praising it clearly hasn't had to rely on it when it really matters. Number 7. The John Deere 531 engine is a glaring example of how even big-name brands can churn out a bloated, outdated, and painfully overrated diesel lump that should have been retired before it ever saw production. Touted as a workhorse in its day, the 531 is more accurately described as a slow, inefficient brick that just happens to run on diesel, sometimes. Its cold-starting behavior is atrocious, requiring glow plugs, ether, prayer, and often a full battery recharge just to turn over on a chilly morning. Once it finally grinds to life, you're greeted with a dull roar and a vibration pattern so aggressive it feels like the engine is trying to escape its mounts. Despite its size and displacement, the performance is underwhelming at best. Torque delivery is sluggish, throttle response is lazy, and fuel consumption is hilariously high for what little you get in return. The injection system is notorious for fouling and wear. The cooling system barely keeps up under load, and oil leaks are practically baked into the design. Maintenance is more of a ritual than a task, with awkward access points and components seemingly arranged for maximum inconvenience. And despite its size, the engine somehow manages to feel cramped, like everything is trying to fit into a space 1/3 too small. It's not just old, it's obsolete, heavy, and maddeningly stubborn. The 531 is not a rugged classic. It's an industrial misstep clinging to relevance through sheer mass and misplaced brand loyalty. If you've run one, you know it's not dependable. It's just too big to quit all at once. Number 6. The John Deere 720 diesel is often hailed as a classic, but peel back the layers of nostalgia and you're left with a clunky, overhyped, and infuriatingly stubborn machine that's more chore than champion. Equipped with the infamous 2-cylinder Johnny Popper diesel engine, the 720 sounds less like a working tractor and more like a misfiring cannon dragging itself through a hayfield. Its absurd starting procedure, requiring a separate gasoline pony motor to crank the diesel engine, feels like something designed in the age of steam, not modern mechanization. Half the time, the pony motor is more trouble than the diesel itself, stalling, flooding, or refusing to engage just when you need it most. And once you do get the beast running, the ride is anything but smooth. Massive vibration, relentless pounding, and ear-shattering noise make long hours on the 720 feel more like punishment than productivity. Despite its size, the tractor offers sluggish acceleration, clunky gear changes, and a steering effort that feels like you're arm wrestling a stubborn mule. Fuel efficiency is laughably bad, and the emissions output is enough to fumigate an entire barnyard. Maintenance is an exercise in patience and profanity, thanks to awkward access points, heavy components, and a design that seems deliberately hostile to mechanics. While it might look good parked at a tractor show, actually operating the John Deere 720 diesel in the real world reveals it for what it truly is: an outdated, inefficient relic that's been running on reputation far longer than diesel. Number 5. The International Harvester C60 engine is a clattering, gas-guzzling embarrassment that somehow manages to combine low performance, high maintenance, and sheer mechanical awkwardness into one sluggish, outdated package. Built with all the finesse of a sledgehammer, this straight-six gasoline engine was supposed to deliver steady power for medium-duty trucks. But instead it delivers underwhelming torque, wheezy throttle response, and an appetite for fuel that borders on absurd. Despite its size, it struggles with even modest loads, laboring up hills like it's hauling concrete in every cylinder. Starting it feels like gambling, especially in cold weather, thanks to a primitive ignition setup that can misfire, stall, or flood at will. Once running, the C60's vibration is constant, its noise intrusive, and its operation as smooth as dragging a toolbox down a gravel road. Oil leaks are almost guaranteed, and overheating is a recurring issue, made worse by a cooling system that was clearly an afterthought. The carburetor is notoriously finicky, never holding a proper tune, while the distributor and timing components seem designed to shift out of spec the moment you turn your back. Even basic maintenance requires contortionist-level access and a deep well of mechanical patience. For an engine that was supposed to be reliable and industrial grade, the C60 behaves like it's actively trying to escape its own block. It's not a workhorse. It's a whimpering dinosaur that's long overstayed its welcome in the world of usable machinery. Number 4. The Ford 144 diesel is a painfully underpowered, noisy, and ill-conceived engine that somehow manages to disappoint in every category that matters. Slapped into a range of compact tractors with the promise of efficiency and reliability, it instead delivers a gutless, shaky experience that feels more like operating a cement mixer on its last legs. With its measly horsepower output and laughable torque, the 144 diesel struggles with basic fieldwork, choking under the lightest of loads and begging for mercy on inclines. Cold starts are an ordeal, often requiring a full battery charge, ether spray, and a dose of luck just to get the crank moving. Once it does fire up, it delivers a rattling, smoky mess of a power band, filled with vibration, delayed throttle response, and engine knock that sounds like something is about to eject from the block. Its outdated mechanical injection system delivers fuel with all the subtlety of a hammer, while its cooling system can barely keep the engine from overheating on a warm afternoon. Maintenance is a nightmare, with cramped service access, awkward component placement, and a reputation for injector and head gasket issues that turn routine work into time-consuming frustration. Fuel economy is mediocre at best, emissions are thick and unfiltered, and the driving experience is so rough that even basic mowing feels like punishment. The Ford 144 diesel isn't just a weak performer, it's a mechanical dead end, limping through tasks it should have conquered and dragging Ford's legacy through a cloud of soot and disappointment. Number 3. The Kohler K-Series engines are the mechanical equivalent of stubborn old mules. Noisy, temperamental, outdated, and overrated beyond belief. Marketed for decades as dependable small engines, these cast-iron dinosaurs were already behind the curve when they were new, relying on ancient side valve technology, crude carburation, and ignition systems that seem to operate purely on luck. Starting one is often a ritual of frustration. Choke it, crank it, backfire, stall, crank again, swear, repeat. Once running, they drone with a harsh mechanical clatter that makes even basic yard work sound like a demolition site. Vibration is excessive and relentless, shaking bolts loose and rattling components like the engine is trying to self-destruct from the inside out. Fuel efficiency is a joke, especially for the tiny horsepower output these engines barely deliver. Tuning the carb is a constant chore. Too rich and it floods. Too lean and it stumbles and surges like a malfunctioning blender. Maintenance access is annoying. Parts wear out quickly. And for all their so-called durability, K-Series engines have a long track record of oil leaks, smoking exhausts, and blown head gaskets. The lack of overhead valves and a true pressure lubrication system in many variants only adds to the sense that these engines were designed with minimal longevity in mind. Sure, they still run, so do cockroaches. But that doesn't mean anyone should have to suffer through the endless clatter, poor performance, and greasy repair jobs that come with owning one. The K-Series isn't a classic. It's a mechanical relic that overstayed its welcome decades ago. Number 2. The Perkins 3.152 diesel is one of the most overrated engines to ever haunt the agricultural and industrial world. A shaky, smoke-belching mess that's more irritating than impressive. Often glorified for its so-called simplicity, what you actually get is an underpowered 3-cylinder rattlebox that barely keeps up with the demands of basic tractor work. Its cold starting ability is infamously miserable, often requiring excessive cranking, ether, or a full battery recharge just to cough to life. Followed immediately by a cloud of white smoke thick enough to trigger a fire alarm. Once running, it delivers a harsh, uneven idle and a painfully narrow power band that makes throttle control feel like guesswork. The engine is notoriously rough, with vibrations that travel through the chassis like a jackhammer, making even short tasks fatiguing. Despite its modest output, it consumes fuel at a rate that feels disproportionate to the minimal performance it delivers. Oil leaks are almost guaranteed after moderate hours of use, and maintenance quickly becomes a recurring theme thanks to hard-to-reach components and a fuel system prone to clogging and cavitation. The mechanical injection pump, while durable in theory, often runs out of tune and delivers fuel with all the finesse of a sledgehammer. Emissions are laughably bad, and its trademark rattle only gets worse with age. The Perkins 3.152 isn't a reliable workhorse. It's a dated, overhyped anchor that runs on noise, smoke, and the patience of those unlucky enough to own one. Number 1. The Wisconsin VH4 Deere-cooled V4 is a textbook disaster in engine design. An obnoxious, outdated monstrosity that sounds like a helicopter crash and runs like a wheelbarrow full of bricks. Touted as a rugged industrial engine, the VH4D is instead a heavy, underpowered gas guzzler that manages to combine all the worst traits of air-cooled technology into one clattering, oil-leaking nightmare. Cold starts are an exercise in patience and profanity, often requiring endless cranking, a worn-out pull cord, or a sketchy electric starter that feels like it's begging to die. And once it finally wheezes to life, the real punishment begins. An ear-splitting roar paired with violent vibration that shakes every bolt, mount, and nerve in your body. The engine's carburetor is a constant problem child, difficult to tune, impossible to keep stable, and the magneto ignition system belongs in a museum, not on anything expected to run daily. Overheating is a chronic issue, especially when debris clogs the laughably inadequate cooling fins, and there's no warning system before it cooks itself into oblivion. Oil leaks are basically standard equipment, and the valve train sounds like a bag of hammers inside a metal trash can. Its weight is absurd for what little power it produces, making it both difficult to install and a nightmare to service. Parts are expensive and often hard to find, meaning repairs drain your wallet just as fast as the engine drains your will to live. The VH4D isn't a durable classic. It's a mechanical tormentor that should have been left behind with black and white television.